with the ISO Nymph, I like to tie it on a 1870 size 14 Daiichi swimming nymph hook. For the tailing material, I like to use ringneck pheasant dyed light olive. I use like 4 or 5 barbules for the tail, and this replaces peacock, which I find to be very brittle and breaks easy. The next thing that you do on it would be to put your white line going down the back, which is very prevalent, and it is an eye catcher for fish. And with that, I use ultra wire Brassie white, and it just runs right down the back. For the body itself, I use SLF Squirrel Spikey dubbing, and it's rusty brown, and I blend that 3 parts to 1 part Peacock Ice Dub, and that will form your body. For the thorax, I like to use the SLF, but I mix rusty brown, but I mix it with Claret, and proportions on that are 3 parts Claret and 1 part Peacock Black, and that gives you a very nice thorax. Okay, tires, I start halfway down, and I just wrap nice and easy, like such. Trim off. The next thing is your tail, and for the tail, I use pheasant, and the reason why I use it is because the original recipe called for peacock, and I found that over a period of time fishing it that the peacock is too brittle of a material and it falls apart. So I substituted a dyed light olive pheasant tail fibers. You pull about 7 or 8 of them off, and you line them up nice. And when you tie them in, you want them to go a little bit down the shank of the hook. So obviously pinch wrap and line your things up to make sure that it's proper length. And then you just, nice and easy, wrap right down the shank. And you can see where I stop. It's just a little bit down. And then you trim off. Okay, your next material is going to be your white line that goes down the top of all ISOs. It goes from their tail all the way up to the eyes. And you lay it right on the top of the shank of the hook, and I'll show you. You get this like this, and I always go all the way up past it and then wrap back. It always secures. Every time it secures. You don't want your flies falling apart. And you can see how I go a little bit down the bend of the shank, and you can see how it's lashed right in on the top. Okay, so your next move is you're going to want to rib that, and you want to be able to hold this in place. So you take your finger and you make a loop, and you just tighten that in like that. Go right back down to your tie-in spot for your white wire. Put your fingers in it, open up the loop, hit the top one, and then just drop it behind you. That is going to be used later for your ribbing to tie on your white line and your materials. The next section would be your body, obviously, and that's done with mixing up your Squirrel SLF Spikey dubbing in a rust brown color, and that is actually 3 parts of that to 1 part Peacock Black Ice Dub, and this is what you get. And the reason why I do this is because I like ice dub in all my flies, all my nymphs, that is, because it adds a little bit of spikiness and it adds a little bit of flash, and it has a tendency to capture air bubbles, which are really good because when these insects are emerging, they're breaking their nymphal shuck with gases, and it causes air bubbles. And so if you can create air bubbles, it's going to help catch fish. And you just put it on nice and easy, like such. Then you wrap up 3/4 of the way up and wrap back to secure it. And once you have that done, now you're ready for your white line going down the back of the bug itself. And you line that up with the center of your eye. This should be over here. And you just lash it on. And what I do is I go forward 2 or 3, and then I go backwards to the bend-in spot where I tied in. Now your next step is to take that piece of tying thread that you had to make the ribs, and you just rib it all the way up. I find that like 5 or 6 are perfect. And that one was 6. Pull this up, trim it off, and now you want to pull your wire back right over the wire that came forward. And I'll show you how it looks when it's done. You can see there, it's lined right up, so when you pull it forward, it's all going to be one continuous straight line. Your next step is to put on your Scud back. It's a 1/8 inch black Scud back, and you lay that right over the wire, and you put it on a couple of lashes like this. And now comes your Thorax material. And the Thorax material is 3 parts Claret ice dub, which looks like this. And I got to check again because, believe it or not, these are all done, and I can't remember every one of them. And this one is also 1.5 parts of Peacock Black, which is this. Mix it up so it's a pretty even blend. And then you come in and this you could put on a little loose because it's going to be picked out. It's going to be covered with the white line and your thorax, your wing pad. And you just wrap forward. I'm going to add a little bit more here. And you can see I'm not really putting it on tight. Then you leave yourself a little bit of room here at the eye, because you're going to be pulling over your wing pad, which is your black Scud back. And you put a nice little hitch on it like that, and like such. Pull this up nice and tight, give it a trim. Pull your wire, but make sure when you're lining this up, you can see how I'm going to line it up with the eye. It lines it with the back of the white and the eye, and then you can just lash it on like such. And you can see it's nice and straight before I trim it. So right over that wing pad, and I just reach in with my scissors and trim this. Okay. Whip finish. Got a little edge there. Okay, and trim this, and now we're not done yet. Make sure it's nice and even. Everything is perfect. So now we got to pick out the gills. And we do that with our dentist tool or this little handy guy here. And you just pick it out. Doesn't take long. Like such. Flatten it down. And trim these on an angle so it looks like it's part of the bug. And then on the bottom you want to make it flat. And there you go. And you can see it's all lined up with the gills all picking out to capture air bubbles as it's going. You got the white line going all the way down the back. So you're in good shape. That should catch plenty of fish. Okay, funny thing about this fly is when I was younger, a little bit more energetic, I had an insect aquarium where I accumulated a bunch of larvae and all kinds of nymphs. And my big mistake was to add a iso nymph into the collection of bugs that I already had. Within a week, they disintegrated everything. They just chewed them in half, cannibalized them, and I was left with one iso, and then finally he emerged and flew away. But anyways, they are vicious. They are fast. It's a really interesting nymph.